Anna, thank you very much. And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we're going to take a first look at tomorrow's papers. It's the press preview, of course. And tonight I'm joined by the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the Times columnist and leader writer Sebastian Payne. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this story on the front of tomorrow's Guardian. Its headline, IMF blames Trump tariffs for major negative shock to the world economy. We'll be right back after this short break.
This conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first.
You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. It's our first look at what is on the front of tomorrow's papers. But first, our top stories tonight. And thousands have arrived in Vatican City to pay their respects to Pope Francis as officials confirm that the pontiff's funeral will take place this Saturday. At least 20 tourists have been killed and dozens injured after an attack by militant gunmen in Indian-controlled Kashmir. And the global cost of President Trump's tariffs became clear today as growth forecasts around the world were slashed by the IMF. A very good evening. Time then for the press preview. It's our first look at what is on tomorrow's front pages, and tonight we'll be checking out the headlines with the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the Times columnist and leader writer Sebastian Payne. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Great to see you both. We're going to have a look at some of those front pages first, though, starting with The Guardian, reporting on the news that the International Monetary Fund blamed Trump's tariffs for a major negative shock on the global economy. While The Express carries analysis insisting the Chancellor Rachel Reeves can't blame Donald Trump's tariff scheme for the IMF's decision to slash its forecast for the UK's fiscal growth by a third. The Eye says there's a dash for cash ISAs, reporting that savers are rushing to deposit funds ahead of the Chancellor's possible changes. As negotiations over a possible ceasefire in Ukraine continue, the Financial Times reports on Vladimir Putin's offer to have Russian troops advance no further from their current positions for now. And the Telegraph leading on that story as well, saying that US President Donald Trump will allow Putin to keep almost all of the territory he seized from Ukraine under the terms of a proposed peace settlement. According to the Metro, starting next month, police forces will be given the power to instantly sack officers who don't pass vetting procedures. The Mail's headline quotes Kemi Badenoch saying the Prime Minister owes women an apology after he said a woman is an adult female, appearing to backtrack on his previous stance on trans rights. The Times reports that solar panels linked to Chinese slave labour will not be used by Britain's state-owned energy company. And The Star carries excerpts from an interview with Gary Lineker in which he claims he would have been happy to carry on presenting Match of the Day, but the BBC wanted someone else. And we're joined tonight by Jenny Kleeman and Sebastian Payne. Really nice to see you both. We'll chat about the Pope a little bit later, but now we're going to talk about the economy, Jenny. Starting with The Guardian, IMF blames Trump tariffs for major negative shock to world economy. This is a real blow, isn't it, especially to Rachel Reeves?
Yes, well, I mean, the IMF saying today, revising its forecast for growth. So much for Liberation Day. It was the US whose forecast was the most significantly downgraded, losing about a percentage point compared to what was predicted in January. It was predicted 2.7% growth in January, 1.8% now. And this is as a consequence of Trump's tariffs. And the IMF has said that it doesn't expect a global recession, but a global recession is much more likely now after Trump's tariffs. And the consensus among global economists and people in finance is that the kind of gains that were made post-COVID and given all that we've been through with the Ukraine war are being eroded as a consequence of the tariffs. But when we look at the picture in the UK, it's slightly more complicated. Our growth forecasts have been downgraded, not as much as the US, and the IMF points to domestic factors being responsible largely for that, and there are various different domestic factors. One of them is to do with the price of fuel. It's also to do with energy prices and inflation and the cost of borrowing in the UK. So things are slightly more complicated. It predicted that the British economy is going to grow by 1.1% this year as opposed to its previous forecast of 1.6%.
Yeah, headline in The Times, IMF warns Reeves of Trump tariff job cuts. What do you make of all this, Sebastian?
Well, it's really quite hard to sort of unpack how much is Trump and how much is the domestic picture on what's going on here, because what the IMF have said is, as Jenny said, we all know, is the tariffs are going to have a negative effect on the world economy. They are going to slow growth. They're going to reduce production and increase prices, i.e. they're inflationary. Everyone kind of knew that was going to happen. But it does look like the UK is going to get pretty badly hit, and according to the front page there, it says that our economy will grow 1.1% this year. Again, very low number, well below the kind of 2% that we should be aiming for as a minimum as a country to kind of keep up with living standards. And it was meant to be 1.6%. And I think even next year it's still going to be a bit low. But it does say, the IMF said, domestic factors were the main driver behind the downgrade. So you've got, number one, energy costs, which are still very high in the UK, much higher than other comparable countries because the UK is so reliant on gas, which it's having to import, which has gone very high given the the Ukraine war has not really come down. The fact, obviously, nuclear power stations, we don't have a lot of those in the UK producing energy, and coal has been discontinued, and renewables are reliant, obviously, on the weather. So that kind of energy mix makes the UK particularly exposed, and that goes into what we've seen at the Scunthorpe Steelworks, because a lot of companies are finding it very expensive to produce in the UK. The other fact the IMF, of course, mentions is the big tax rises that Rachel Reeves announced, about £40 billion, which are gradually kicked in April, more to come. And that is obviously adding an extra burden. So it's not great news for Rachel Reeves, but in some ways, the Chancellor can say it's against this global backdrop of everyone's growth downgrading. But this is going to make some big, tough questions for her to answer come the next budget, because Labour had this straitjacket of where it could raise taxes. It's basically raised all the taxes it can without breaking its manifesto pledge by piling it onto business. If it doesn't get growth, and if things don't start to pick up in the economy, it's going to have to raise taxes again to make it all add up. Where's that going to come from? It's a very good question. OK, we'll explore that more, perhaps, after 11 o'clock. Just want to touch on Ukraine, Jenny. Front page of The Telegraph, Trump to let Putin keep seized land.
Oh, this is extraordinary. There is a 7-point plan to end the war in Ukraine that is going to be discussed in London tomorrow. And by the looks of this, Putin is pretty much going to get everything that he wants here. This is, you know, the Telegraph goes through several of these points. Point 4 covers territory, with America offering to recognise Russian sovereignty over Crimea, which, of course, Ukraine cannot accept, says that they will not accept. Point 6, Ukraine would sign a minerals deal allowing US companies to access the country's natural resources. And point 7 is establishing a new relationship between the US and Russia, lifting the sanctions. So this, in many respects, looks like it's giving Putin everything he wants. It's relying on Putin to keep his word and to not take more territory. We know that Putin's word is not really worth very much. And we kind of knew this was going to happen. When Trump said that he could end the war on day one, we knew that this would mean giving Russia pretty much everything that it wants here. Very, very few concessions. So obviously we'll see what happens in these discussions today. But if I was Zelensky, I would be looking at this report and feeling very depressed.
Yeah, Foreign Office sources apparently telling the Telegraph that they're not expecting any deal to be struck in London. It's more of a chance for Ukrainians to put their side of the coin. It's on the front of the Financial Times as well, Sebastian. Yeah, I mean, the best that can be said about this is that this is only an opening gambit. Hopefully this is not the end state, because if this was the end state, it would be completely disgraceful. It's very hard to see what Ukraine gets anything out of this, because it wouldn't have a US peacekeeping force. It wouldn't be allowed to join NATO. It wouldn't gain back any of its land, not Russia's land, its land, that was conceded both in this war and in the 2014 invasion of Crimea. I mean, the only plus sides you could say is that the rump of Ukraine would be allowed to join the EU under this. It would still be allowed to buy weapons from Western manufacturers. So I guess that is something. But I think these, you know, as Volodymyr Zelensky says on the front page of the Financial Times, these are signals, ideas, discussions, but it isn't an official proposition. No, exactly. So we'll keep pushing on that. OK. All right. Still potentially a long way to go. Thank you both for the moment. Coming up after the break, following last week's Supreme Court decision, is Sir Keir Starmer now contradicting himself on the issue of gender. Discussing that next.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, and yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks, but taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
Sky News, the full story first.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
The Premier League Run-In is live exclusively on Peacock. Catch your breath. Sunday, a strike towards Premier League history is in sight, with Liverpool on the edge of a second Premier League title. Full of tension, full of jeopardy, full of goals. Spurs look to thwart their trophy hopes. Everything magnified. This is the Premier League Run-In, live exclusively on Peacock.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello again, welcome back. You're with Sky News. Just got a little bit of breaking news coming out of the United States. Elon Musk has said in the last few moments that the time he spends with Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency will, in quotes, drop significantly from May, and he will allocate more time to Tesla. So Elon Musk, the boss of Tesla, of course, saying he's going to spend less time with the Department of Government Efficiency and more time at his company Tesla. A reflection, no doubt, on his frustration over tariffs. More on that a little bit later. With me, Jenny Kleeman and Sebastian Payne. We'll get your thoughts on that in a bit, perhaps. We're short of time. I just want to ask you about the front page of the Daily Mail. Kemi Badenoch saying today the Prime Minister owes an apology to so many women. Sebastian, why don't you lead on this?
So this is following the landmark Supreme Court ruling last week defining what a woman is in terms of the Equality Act. Now, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party and leader of the opposition, has been very firmly stating how she defines a woman and a trans woman being two very separate things. Keir Starmer has changed his position, shall we say, somewhat over this. Over the couple of years, has really battled with kind of increasingly complex and tortured public statements. But today, Keir Starmer came out and basically said he agreed with the Supreme Court ruling and a woman is an adult human female, which is what Kemi Badenoch has said and has kind of accepted that. But obviously, she's trying to punch at this bruise and saying the PM needs to go further and apologise. I think when it comes to PMQs, we'll probably be hearing more about this tomorrow from the Leader of the Opposition. But this is clearly the first time in a good while I think Ms Badenoch has actually been on the front foot on an issue.
It's been a tortuous journey for Labour, hasn't it?
It has, and they haven't known how to handle this question, and their opponents and interviewers alike have been making a lot of political capital about this. I have to say, I do think that this attack line from Kemi Badenoch is incredibly opportunistic and disingenuous, given that the Conservatives were in government and she herself was in a position. The point about all of this is the Equality Act needed clarifying. It went to the Supreme Court, where the judges there decided what they felt the definition of a woman was, according to the Equality Act in 2010. This could have been clarified by MPs at any point ever since then, but there's been a lack of political courage on all sides to step in and define things properly. And, you know, this is not to say that the issue is now clear-cut now, because where are trans men going to go to the bathroom? Some trans men look extremely masculine. Are they going to be walking in and being... You know, there's all sorts... There's a road yet to travel on.
Yeah, a long road.
A long
the guidance that is now being called out.
Exactly, exactly. And for Kemi Badenoch to say now that he needs to apologise to women, there were so many more constructive things that she could have done when the Conservatives were in government and that she could be doing now, instead of just, you know, again, the only thing she's got is culture wars in all of this.
All right. I just want to finish on this remarkable front page from The Mirror. In the arms of God is the headline, and this photo of a peaceful Pope Francis lying in state, Sebastian.
Yeah, we've seen this quite a lot today, that and the full picture, which is on some of the other front pages tomorrow on the Telegraph and what have you, is incredibly moving, of the Pope lying in rest there. And obviously millions of Catholics across the world are in mourning over his death. We know that funerals are obviously going to be on Saturday, and Prince William will be attending on behalf of the UK. And then, of course, the conclave will start next month. But for the moment, it's all people...
Jenny, thank you.